Welcome, welcome everyone to today's segment of Tracy's Arsenal, your battle plan for better health. I'm Tracy Randall, founder of Generational Health, and I am absolutely thrilled today to have as my guest Valerie Aloisio. I did it, didn't I, Valerie?
Did great.
Valerie Aloisio, founder of Hemp Lifestyle Network and advisory board member for Kannaway, the leading CBD hemp company. Welcome to the show today, Valerie.
Thank you so much for having me, Tracy. Very excited to be with you today.
I am so excited. I've been waiting for this interview. And to our listeners today, we're going to be talking about some things. We're going to be talking about cannabis. We're going to be talking about hemp. And here's another word, just like your last name. I'm going to try this out, the endocannabinoid system. I did it.
Awesome.
I know, the endocannabinoid system. And maybe even touch on medical marijuana. What's legal, what's not, but why, most importantly, Valerie, why we need it. Yeah. So I'm excited to have you here today.
And I'm thrilled to be here. There's so much information that we have for the listeners. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So our goal is to hopefully educate in a short period of time, and then we can have other segments. But there's a lot of information, and it's all very timely, as you know.
Absolutely it is. And Valerie, as you know, our founder of the American Anti-Cancer Institute, Bob Wright, absolutely endorses the use of cannabis and hemp for a healthy body and mind. In fact, we actually did an interview with Bob about this very subject back in November of 2017. But you were actually one of the panelists and speakers at our Get Mad About Cancer Health Summit here in Atlanta in April of 2017. That was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
Certainly was. What a great group you had there, and people were very interested in this topic. So I'm thrilled to be back here again and hopefully doing some other things with you guys in the very near future.
Absolutely. We're excited about that. And, you know, as I mentioned, back in November of 2017, a few months ago, I did interview Bob about this subject. And Valerie, quite frankly, as he began to speak about this, as I know you're going to be doing today and talking about the endocannabinoid system, I was definitely surprised at how passionate Bob is about this subject, and we learned so much from him from that interview. But Valerie, you're definitely an expert on this rather controversial subject. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and why you got involved with this?
Yes, thank you. Well, you know, I've been in the health and wellness space over 25 years at this point now. Unfortunately, at that time, my mom had passed of breast cancer, and that really got me learning more about alternative and complementary approaches to healthcare. I was pregnant with my daughter. I had a 3-year-old, and of course, when something like this hits you and your family, you know, I wanted to do whatever I could to protect my family and raise them in as most healthful way as possible. And that's when I really started to look at integrative approaches to healthcare. So I've been in the health and wellness space for all that time. And a few years ago, I was asked by a dear friend of mine to look at this whole industry of CBD and hemp and cannabis, because he was asked to become the president of the leading company in this space. And at first I said, oh no, I taught my kids not to do drugs. I don't know about this. And, you know, truth be told, I mean, that was it. I was like, I've been in the health and wellness space, and this is something that I am not aware of. I just know about marijuana, and so does most people. And I had no idea what we're going to share today. And when I started to find out about what we're going to share today, I just knew that I had to be part of the education process, part of the change that needed to happen when it comes to public opinion about cannabis, a wonderful plant. And so that's why I decided to come on board and help, launch this company, and also become a CBD hemp educator. And that's really what my passion is today, because it's something that nobody knows about and everybody should know about.
You know, you're so right. There's so much controversy about it. So many, there's fact and fiction about this, misunderstanding about it. And that's one of the things that Bob really shared when we interviewed him. And I know you'll be sharing more about that today. I am definitely interested in learning so much more about it. And I have my own reasons for that now, as you know. But, cannabis, hemp, medical marijuana, You shared lots and lots of info about this at our health summit in April of 2017 here in Atlanta. But tell us a little bit about the history of hemp. Very fascinating. You shared that in Atlanta. Maybe just the abbreviated version, and if they want the longer version, they can, get the whole summit. But tell us a little bit about the history of.
Well, first of all, let's just talk the differences between hemp and marijuana, because this is really where the misinformation comes into place. We have the cannabis. Cannabis is the forest. And then there's different trees in the forest, right? Just like we have lemons and oranges under citrus. So we have cannabis. Marijuana is grown for high levels of THC, the component that gets you high, has a psychotropic effects. And hemp, on the other hand, is grown for very low levels of THC and very high levels of CBD, cannabidiol, and other phytocannabinoids. In fact, most people around the world know hemp for the industrial applications, clothing, textiles, building materials, ropes, canvas, all that. So it really was actually known in the 60s and early 70s as the hippies' disappointment, because people would try to get high with it and they couldn't because it was not grown for that. So we think about the history of hemp, as early as the 1600s, our founding fathers and our settlers brought over hemp plants from Europe, and it was our birthright. It was our go-to crop. We fed our livestock, our cattle, our pigs, our sheep, hemp. The War of 1812 was fought over the hemp trade. In times of war, it was mandated for you to grow hemp. Our founding fathers were all hemp farmers, and they actively advocated for the commercialization of hemp because guess what? They knew it was our birthright. They knew that this country could be founded on hemp. Henry Ford actually built a car out of hemp fibers. It was stronger than steel, and he ran it on hemp biofuel. So, hey, what about that? I mean, we would never have to fight another war overseas for oil. We would have more than enough to power this nation up 10 times over. But then, what happened? Part of the history is, people know the name William Randolph Hearst, who owned the papers, the trees, the forests, and DuPont was coming out with plastic and paint, and, the industrial age was kicking in. And, these hemp farmers were encroaching on, these big boys and girls empires. And long story short, they started lobbying for high taxes, which made the hemp farmer non-existent. And that was a very, very sad day in our country. And you can look it up. It was called the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. At the same time, Tracy, marijuana was coming in from Mexico. And basically, to paraphrase, well, it looks like the same thing. Let's all clump it all together and make it illegal. And again, as I mentioned before, a very sad day for this country because everything that you see today, pretty much anything made out of petroleum based, hempcrete is stronger than concrete. It doesn't burn. It's antimicrobial, antifungal. We know that hemp clothing and hemp fibers are even better than cotton for us. So, unfortunately, our history took a little wrong turn. And what was always part of our food chain, hemp, cannabidiol, because of course we fed our livestock, we ingested it, was taken away rather dramatically from our food supply. And hence, we now became deficient in a very important nutrient. And, so that was a little bit about the history of hemp. And then it wasn't until the 1980s, and actually the 1960s, when Dr. Raphael Mechoulam from Israel, discovered THC and CBD. And he's known as the father of cannabis research. In fact, the United States has been funding cannabis research in Israel for over 50 years. The same government that basically says there's no medicinal value. So we're not going to get into politics today.
Well, we'll let Bob do that when I interview him. Bob lights up when he can say something controversial about anything with the establishment. So we'll let him do that kind of talk. I agree.
I know, but I could get on that soapbox, I'm sure. But we're not going to do that today.
You wouldn't mind either, but no, let's keep it. Yeah, we've got several interviews that we're going to do that we've already set the schedule for. So we'll make sure that people get what they want, the questions answered that they want, and that is just so incredibly fascinating. As you begin to share the history of hemp and what happened, it just makes so much sense. And don't get me on my soapbox, because I can really do that as well. But this is what Bob shared in the last interview of how our bodies need this product. It needs this plant, and it was taken from us. And guess what? Now it's on the tip of everyone's tongue. People are asking about it. For sure, they want to know how this works, and get rid of the myths, share the facts, and let's make it happen. So at the Get Mad About Cancer Health Summit back in April 2017, you also shared about what is the, here I go, endocannabinoid system. I'm getting so good at that.
You're doing great.
And how does CBD feed the CB1 and CB2 receptors? So tell us about that. Explain that in, everyday normal terms.
Yes. And believe you me, guys, there's a lot of research out there. The discovery of the actually it's called the endogenous cannabinoid system, because endogenous means within. So we actually, as mammals, produce cannabinoids in our body. But because we haven't been ingesting the one plant that gives us primarily this nutrient, if you will, our bodies have become deficient in it. And actually, there's a medical term now called clinical endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome. Big long word, but it is a medical term. And now they're starting to clump in things like lupus and fibromyalgia and a lot of autoimmune issues and neurodegenerative diseases into this bucket, because our bodies really are devoid of cannabinoids. We cannot produce them. In fact, the last time we may have had any cannabinoids is in mother's breast milk. In fact, now the research is coming out that it is indeed a very important part of early childhood development. In fact, the endogenous cannabinoid system is actually at day 16 of gestation is now in place. So this is just not, I get goosebumps. It's not me saying this. It's not the science, but this is nature. This is our bodies. Every mammal has this endogenous cannabinoid system, and it requires cannabinoids to function properly. And of course, how are we going to get it now? I mean, since hemp and marijuana, as everyone knows, is illegal still, believe it or not, in this country to grow, except for uncertain states and for medicinal value reasons and research. And we'll get into some of the legalities in a bit. But our bodies actually have receptors called the CB1 and CB2 receptors, and I'm sure Bob could go into a lot more detail on that. But we have these receptors in basically the nervous system and the brain, CB1 receptors and CB2 receptors in the gut visceral area, where it supports the immune system. So what's so interesting is that in 2003, a patent was awarded by our own government through the National Institutes of Health to Dr. Julius Axelrod, who basically stated cannabinoids as antioxidants and neuroprotectants. It's called the 507 patent. I don't have the whole number in front of me, but if you Google the 507 CBD patent, it'll come right up. And it basically states cannabinoids as neuroprotectants and antioxidants. And that is really something, because Tracy, as you know, if your immune system is compromised, if something's an antioxidant, it's going to support the immune system. Right. If something is a neuroprotectant, it's going to support the nervous system. So yes, we have an immune system, we have a nervous system, we have a respiratory system, but we also have this wonderful endogenous cannabinoid system, which up until the 80s was not known. So right. We can't, blame, the medical establishment and all this other stuff, because this was a fairly new scientific discovery, if you will, with an age-old plant that needed to be part of our diets. That was taken. So now, though, we are here in this place and time where a wrong is being corrected, and we get to be stewards of this information so that people know that they don't have to move to a medical marijuana state so they can get the medicine that they need, because hemp, CBD, is a vitamin, is a nutrient, is a food, actually. So
so I have some questions, and I want to make sure and point out some things you said, because one of the things that you said that was rather confusing, and I want to make sure the listeners hear this. You did say, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that growing hemp is illegal in the States, but taking hemp is not. Is that correct?
Well, yes, that's true. Remember, hemp, CBD, cannabidiol derived from hemp, is a food. Hemp. Well, then we'll backtrack a little bit because, according to the 19th Circuit Court ruling from a few years ago, basically said that as long as you grow your hemp outside of the country, and you're extracting from the stalk and the seed of the mature hemp plant, and your product contains 0.3% or less of THC, which is the psychotropic, which means you cannot get high. This is
Right.
getting healthy, not high. Then your product can be legally distributed as a supplement, in the United States.
In every state.
Yeah, and yes, some states now, though, according to some recent governmental official, stupidity. No, did I say that?
Careful. That's Bob. That's what Bob just say.
So that's okay. I won't get started. No, but it has there's now been allowed, I guess, for President Obama had said, listen, the states can do whatever they want to do, and this is not something that's federally mandated and stuff like that, but state by state has the right to make their laws, if you will. Right now, I can't speak for all, but we know our product that we're speaking about is federally legal because we adhere to the 19th Circuit Court ruling that states what has to happen in order for your product to come here. Now, people will say, well, what about Colorado and other, states that grow medicinal hemp or medicinal marijuana, for instance? It's supposed to stay within the state. That's technically the law. Like if you grow in Colorado, it's supposed to stay in Colorado. And every state has its own medical marijuana laws. Now, I'm not here to talk about medical marijuana. That's a little bit different subject because you're dealing now with the marijuana plant,
right,
and different compounds and strains and all that. That's not my area of expertise, although I am learning. I find it fascinating. What we're talking about here is the health without the high. We're talking about cannabidiol derived from hemp and the legalities around that. So what we have and what we're talking about are supplements. This is not a medicine here. Although the products that we do have, I know Bob is aware, are used in other countries as a medicine, but here in the United States, this is a supplement. That's it.
Got it. That is so interesting, and it helped alleviate my question and make sure that the listeners actually heard that the company that you represent, and the reason that we actually have you here today being interviewed on the American Anti-Cancer Institute Facebook page is because Bob Wright actually has done his research. As you know, Bob is an incredible researcher, Valerie, and he doesn't put his stamp of approval on just anyone or anything. It's very difficult. He has to see two things happen before he will endorse a product, if you will. And the first thing is there has to be the science behind it. He is definitely scientific minded. He knows the human body inside and out. He's brilliant. And yet, so it has to have the science behind it. But really for Bob, and I love this about Bob, it's the testimonies too. The product, the company or product line that he endorses, he wants to see how does it work on real people. And I know you shared some testimonies when you were here in Atlanta, and let's hold off on that and see if we get to that. But another thing that you mentioned when you were talking earlier that I just definitely have got to talk about, and that is the human immune system, because I'm going to give a little plug here for Bob, but it's also a plug for the cannabis and the hemp. In Bob's book, Killing Cancer, Not People, Bob just lays it out there. Our only defense against cancer and other disease is a strong immune system. And, when our immune system is strong, our body is miraculous. It can fight any disease, any issue. And of course, I'm putting up the disclaimer, Valerie, we don't claim to cure, heal, or diagnose or treat anyone. We just know that when our immune system is strong, our body is miraculous and it can heal itself. And when you said that about babies getting what they need from the nursing moms, my question to you is, and my guess is the moms no longer have anything to pass to the babies. Is that true, or?
Well, I don't know if it's that as much that, like I said, our bodies actually does produce these cannabinoids. However, we're not ingesting the food that we need to increase that production, if you
I
will.
see.
So a
Okay.
minimal amount is being passed on, if you will. But then what happens as we're growing up? What happens, like this was always part of our food chain and
Right.
no longer is. So I think when we think about getting back to nature and getting back to utilizing a plant that's very misunderstood, a lot of people, and I keep saying it's about the health, not the high, because up until just recently, they didn't know. And all the research that was been happening was around marijuana, medical marijuana, THC, and nausea for cancer patients and different things like that. It wasn't until the founder of our company, as a result of a child who had a disease, did he start to say, wait, there's other parts of this plant that have medicinal value. And that's why when we say that we're the category creator, the CBD market, cannabidiol, and all this education that we're sharing today did not exist. It just did not exist until he had the kind of the visionary, he's kind of like like Bob, to really understand that there was more to this plant. And so now the research is just, you guys, you just have to Google CBD and anything. And there is like just tens of thousands of papers and studies and here and abroad. And it's just phenomenal, actually. But it's also quite sad because people don't know this. Now, one thing I do want to cover, because we did talk a little bit about the legalities. One of the things that you must look for are lab reports, to make sure that your product is clean and pure. And I know generational farms that have never seen a chemical pesticide or
Right.
herbicide. I mean, that is so important, because if you are growing a crop, no matter how medicinal it may be, in contaminated soils, well, hello, now you're going to get a contaminated product.
Right.
How are you extracting your product? Are you using chemicals for that? We do not, and we provide, actually, there was no standardization of testing before our company came along. And now we test from seed to seal, through this triple lab test. And we put those lab analysis reports plain for everybody to see. So I tell people, you have to look at that very fact, and don't just say it says it on the website. Ask for them, look at them, and how much cannabidiol is actually in the product. That's another thing. And maybe you're going to ask me about that, but you can see how passionate I am. It's very important that our listeners really understand that it's, where it's grown, how it's grown. We actually create our own cultivar to yield high levels of CBD. We have proprietary extraction methods. And then, of course, we actually call out the amount of cannabidiol, one of the amazing phytocannabinoids that are within the plant, but the one that has been named, the neuroprotectant and antioxidant. You want to make sure that your product has a good amount of cannabidiol, CBD,
Well, we definitely, because Bob endorses the company and product line that you represent, Valerie, is, again, the only reason we would have you on here tonight, or this afternoon, rather. And again, we know that Bob did do his research, and it's fascinating to me because of the testimonies. Now, I want to be very careful to be compliant with your company and all. And one of the things that you mentioned is, and I love this, people, I'm a wellness coach, a wellness advocate. I work with different product lines, and people are always coming up to me and saying, does your product work with A, B, C, D, E, F, G? And people believe that, each disease is different than the next disease. And I tell them the exact same thing. Google and see, because you said Google CBD / whatever disease you can imagine, whatever ailment, symptom you can imagine, pain, inflammation, the list goes on. But do your due diligence and do your own research. Google it and see what third party, like WebMD. I don't know if it's on WebMD. Do they?
The National Institutes of Health, pubmd.gov. I mean, we have a great website. It's another third party. It's called echoconnection.org, ECHO, echoconnection.org. And if there's an education tab there, click on the education tab. and that will actually pull up a lot of different white papers and studies. There's also another link showing, state by state laws. So on CBD, on cannabis in general, but it's a great website for people to go to. And we're very, very proud of our sister company, EndoConnection.org, because it really provides a lot of people the information that they need.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just what we know is that when, and I'm just really repeating myself, but I think this is so important, when the immune system is boosted, everything changes in your body, everything, no matter how you boost that immune system. And because one of the things, and I'm just going to say this is not Valerie saying it, she represents the company, Bob does not. Bob called CBD a miracle product. He said every single person needs some of this to activate those CB receptors, right?
Absolutely. And one of the amazing things is, and that's what I tell people, there's a phrase, may you never know what you never got. I know all of us in the wellness field, it's like we always know how bad we can feel, but how good can we feel? Like, we already feel great. People say, well, I don't need to take that because I feel good. What they have to understand is this was meant, we actually have a system that requires this. And when this system is fed, the body can do amazing things. So this endogenous cannabinoid system is responsible for homeostasis, or balance. That's what it does. So, if you are out of balance and now you can put the body into balance, now the body God made us an incredible being, and our bodies actually do the work that it needs to do to have those symptoms alleviated, if you will. And the problem is we're not giving the body what it needs. And so when you feed this endogenous cannabinoid system with plant-based phytocannabinoids, because that's what we need to do now, well, the body starts to do some amazing things. And that's when people say, will it help with this? Will it help with that? We say, hey, do your research. But you know what? It's a food. Give it a try. And then what about all the studies now, Tracy, that are coming out, and papers and thesis about preventing disease. And of course, I know Bob is a huge advocate for that we need to take care of our bodies to manage stress and all these other things. And this just goes like right along with it. And it's just, I will warn everybody though, as you start to do your research, which of course we recommend, be prepared. It's like that proverbial Alice in Wonderland. You're going down this rabbit trail and it's leading you to one thing, and then that opens another door and it leads you to another. And I don't know about anybody else. And I know, Tracy, as you were doing your research, you kind of get a little mad that how come we don't know about this?
Right.
And hence, what fuels my passion every single day is making sure that people get to know. Now it's up to you. I can guide you. Bob made a decision to, use our product line for a reason. And we're forever grateful for that. But he put us through the ringer, and rightfully so, because he is a man of influence. And so we're thrilled about that. But I tell you, people, there's so many times, there's so much junk out there though. Now people go on Amazon, they buy something for $10 and they think, oh my God, their life is going to change. And as well as I do, there's a lot of false advertising. What's supposed to be in it is not. And then they say, oh, that doesn't work for me. Well, you have a body just like everybody else. That endocannabinoid system is just the same as mine. There's maybe a little tax or whatever, but if you give it what it needs, the body will respond. So hence, you're maybe not getting what you need.
Well, and we're going to talk more about this, because how much is too much? Can I take too much? All of those questions on some upcoming interviews that you and I are going to be doing. In the meantime, though, if our listeners would like more information, we've been flashing it on the screen off and on, but we absolutely would love for you to email us at the American Anti-Cancer Institute for more information specifically about this particular line of product that Valerie and Bob endorses here. You can send your emails to productsaaci@gmail.com, and either Bob or myself will respond to, you'll have one of us respond to that email within 72 hours. We're trying to get a little better at the turnaround time, but you will get an answer from us. And we're especially going to be attacking this head on because this is so important. And in an upcoming interview, as I said, Valerie, I'm going to be sharing more about my experience with it. You know, some of the benefits that I've personally seen, and with specific issues that we're dealing with here in our family. You know, one of the things too that I want to say is that oh Lord, I lost my question. It was a real good one. Well, anyway, we're going to be talking more and more about the different, you know, whatever you feel comfortable with, Valerie, being the expert and representing the company. Are there any testimonies that you might want to share that would be compliant with your company? And if not, okay.
Yeah, well, I think as everyone knows, when you're dealing with a supplement, you know, we have to be very, very careful because we can't make any medical claims or anything, but we can share our own sometimes stories without mentioning any type of conditions per se. And I know you guys offline, but rather than online, we can share our personal, you know, stories a lot better because everyone is so different. But for me, I will say one of the things that I noticed right from the get-go was more mental clarity, alertness, focus. You know, for me, I'm a type A, can you tell? No. And, you know, I noticed those things kind of right away. I noticed a better night's rest right away. And
which is so huge, Valerie, so huge.
Yes, and being somebody that suffered about 20 years ago with insomnia and depression and that kind of thing, you know, what comes first is the depression causes the insomnia causes depression, anxiety, all those things. We all know that if we don't get a good night's rest,
right,
a lot of bodily functions and mental functions start to go by the wayside. We know this. But a lot of times people are taking, unfortunately, and if anyone out there is doing this, you have to stop, you know,
yeah,
these sleep aids, which
right,
actually, you know, it makes you think that you're falling asleep, but you're not getting a deep REM cycle of sleep. It just doesn't happen. And the sleep studies prove this. So not to get into off topic, but one of the things I noticed is a better night's rest. Like I said, more energy, more alertness. And then, of course, I'm sure there'll be some people that are maybe our age, you know, out there, women, you know, potentially, you know, I know that are past 30. How about we go there? You know, we have that kind of stuff that happens, right?
Right.
And I'm going to just say, you know, that whole thing like covers on, covers off, covers on, covers off. Everyone out there knows what I'm talking about without me saying. Well, you know, that has been such a godsend for me to be able to cuddle with my honey again, you know?
Right. Well, you know, Bob and I talked about this on another interview. We talked about when we are out of balance hormonally, what happens is that we do suffer from those symptoms that you were alluding to. And if we are hormonally or when we're hormonally balanced, we should not have those symptoms. I breezed right through that time as well, because I was on a powerful nutrition source. My immune system was strong. My hormonal balance was great and still is. And women, we don't have to suffer. So I think that's an incredible testimony. And, you know, one of the things that I was going to say earlier is that this year in 2018, we are going to focus with the AACI on prevention. We're, you know, we can, you know, once someone is diagnosed with something, it is so much more difficult to turn them around. You know, they're under a doctor's care. Doctors typically will tell them to get off their supplements and, you know, just really won't, you know, just won't seem to partner with us the way we'd like them to. And so let's talk prevention. Let's change these statistics. Let's change that cancer is the number1 killer of our children today. Let's change that 1 in 3 people will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. Let's change that 90% of people over 65 will end up with Alzheimer's or some form of dementia. We have to change that, Valerie. And, you know, this is just one piece of that puzzle that's an important piece that we can't let slide. And that's Bob's words, not yours. That's Bob's words saying, we have to do this. And so that's why this is so important, and why the AACI has partnered with you. And so our time is so past being up. And I definitely want to have you back, so I don't want to wear out my welcome, Valerie. And so what I want to do is I want to first of all say thank you so much for your time that you spent today. You travel, Valerie travels all over the world, speaking, educating, helping people, help other people. She's a huge advocate for this. She's so well respected in the industry. And, again, just kudos to you for taking time out to share with us here at the American Anti-Cancer Institute. We so appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for those that are listening, because this is a piece of the puzzle. You know, that's what I will tell you. And I'm looking forward to being on again and then being with you live in the coming months. So we're going to have a lot of fun, Tracy. Thank you so much for having me.
We absolutely are. So to our listeners, here's what we need you to do. We need you to go be right here on this page. We need you, if you're listening or live or to the recording, share, and comment. We need everyone to hear this interview. Also, like the American Anti-Cancer Institute Facebook page. When you like it, you'll be able to see our posts about when we're going to be interviewing Valerie. And of course, we interview Bob Wright every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time right here on the page. And we're going to be doing more and more interviews about this, but also, of course, many other subjects that Bob is passionate about. So make sure you like our page, share, comment. And then one last plug, because we believe that every household should own Bob's book, Killing Cancer, Not People. It's such an important book, and it's just $25, and the proceeds go to benefit the AACI. It helps Bob do what he does, which is counsel families and talk to families and educate them. It's the AACI is a nonprofit, and the sale of the book, as well as the sale of our Get Mad About Cancer Health Summit that we did, that Valerie's featured in, that also, the proceeds also go to benefit the AACI and help us do what we do. So please go to getmadaboutcancer.com and take care of that right now. Buy a book for you. The Health Summit is available on a downloadable link. And so we'll get that off to you immediately as soon as you order. But Valerie, again, honored to have you as my guest today, our guest today on Tracy's Arsenal, your battle plan for better health. And we look forward to seeing you next time, and we will be promoting that soon. So thanks again so much for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.